Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Chichester series, 67 parishes around the city of Chichester in West Sussex. There's some belters down here, folks, so let's go and check them out. Welcome back to the district of Chichester, everybody, and to another beautiful village out here in West Sussex. Now, the locals around here apparently pronounce this place different to how I would. Now, I would pronounce this place Oving, and throughout this episode I may refer to it as Oving, but I have it on good authority that this is the parish of Ooving. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. This is the parish of Ooving if you're a local, but not even they can fully decide on how it should be pronounced. Some call it Oving, others Oving. However you say it, it should not be confused with the only other village with the same name in the country, which can be found in Buckinghamshire. Here in West Sussex, Ooving is a simple enough settlement, but what made this one quite hard to cover was the amount of other bits and bobs around it. The area has been occupied since the Bronze Age. The land here is light and fertile, and Oving Parish has been predominantly farmland since early times. Most of it still is today. The parish boundary includes the settlements of Colworth, Drayton, Merston and Shopwyke, as well as Oving Village. All of these have got bits of interest, including Westbourne House School, Gross Farm, which is famed for the Summer Berry Company, and St Giles Church in Merston. Ooving has the main parish church dating from the 13th century. It's also famous for a type of clinic, which used to be the village school. Its pub, called the Gribble Inn, was also used in the 1990s to brew a brand of amber ale, which I'm sure all the drinkers out there will know. Slicing its way through the parish is a railway line which crosses at least two roads. One of these has a level crossing which features something I've never seen before. It's a complicated one, folks. Let's get to it and see if it all makes sense. If you think Ooving is a curious place with its threefold name, try this on for size. This is Shotwyke, which itself is pronounced in a couple of ways too. It's spelt in two different ways as well. Some spellings have an H between the W and the Y, others don't. Regardless, we can safely say this is the newest part of Oving Parish. The landscape of this western part of the parish has been affected by gravel extraction, which has left a number of lakes that are inaccessible to the public. A brand new housing estate is under construction out here around those lakes, and when completed, this will easily be the largest centre of population within Oving's parish boundaries. The area is bounded to the north and the west by our now familiar friend, the A27, which forms the Chichester bypass at this point. Now, I couldn't follow this route exactly as I wanted to around Shopwyke as I originally intended because of a combination of closed roads and construction traffic. It was very difficult. I can't even begin to tell you how difficult that was to drive around with closed roads all over the place, and it just felt like I was going around in circles, but we got there in the end. Okay, so we're on the road to Oving, and between Shotwyke and Oving we have this, which is a school. It's called Westbourne House School. Now this is as close as I can get to this, because as you can see there's a security barrier there, and the whole thing is protected by 24-hour CCTV, so I don't want to go any further than here. But this of course is the entrance to it, and this is part of it. We'll talk a little bit about this and then we'll head down to the main village. This is Westbourne House School, an independent co-educational preparatory school which serves around 450 boarding and day school pupils from the ages of 3 to 13. Some famous names have been educated here, including the journalist and author Tom Bradby, who's the current presenter of the ITV flagship news programme News at 10. The school was founded in Folkestone in 1907 and was accommodated in a purpose-built school building called Westbourne House. The original building at Folkestone was damaged during the war, so in 1946 the school bought Shopwyke House and grounds, which had been requisitioned during the war and lay empty. Right, let's head for the main village now. To do that we need to pass Shopwyke nurseries, which will be on your left here momentarily. Established in 1934, its reputation for quality has been recognised in the past by the Chelsea Flower Show. The business has also done landscape gardening for the many large estates around here, including of course Goodwood. Our main walk begins at the eastern end of the village on Oving Road. Now it's important to note that this is a village that has an army of unsung heroes who manage many of the local facilities. They are the Ooving Community Action Group. Here we have one of the things they manage, the Oving Jubilee Hall, which opened in 2002. Its architects were Richard Atkinson and it was built by E.A. Chiverton. The hall is well used by various clubs and for parties and social events. Ooving simply could not live without it. It also couldn't live without a bus service. Luckily it has one of them. You can get to Chichester from here if you use the number 85 or the 85A, which link the city to Arundel. This is the High Street, by the way, and it bends around to the left. There you'll find a silhouette of a soldier. We'll see the main war memorial in a bit. As we continue around the bend, we get treated to this old West Sussex County Council sign. I love finding these. They're like a little window back to the past. You know, when you look at this village on a map, you think to yourself it's a really small one and well out of the way. There's not going to be much traffic around. How wrong that is. There's plenty of traffic that comes through. It's a Sunday morning this, and you know, you'd have thought on a Sunday morning, small village and all that, I would see virtually no cars. But yeah, occasionally there is a car that comes through. In fact, there's one coming right now. Amazing. Okay, so we've reached a point here where I'm going to take a right turn up here. This will take us past the pub and we'll loop round towards the church. On the corner is Madam Green Farm. Once a thriving pig farm, it's now the location of some holiday homes and a branch of Chichester Vets, according to Google. Next is Gribble Lane. In front of us here is the village's pub, a thatched property known as the Gribble Inn. It's a popular country pub with a real ale brewery attached to it. Thirsty Ferret, a brand of amber ale, was originally brewed at the Gribble Inn when it was owned by Hall and Woodhouse in 1991. The pub was sold back to the landlord in 2005, but Hall and Woodhouse retained the rights to the Thirsty Ferret name. After the pub, Gribble Lane gets a little empty for a while before bending back around to the right and back into civilization. This was the quietest area of the village. There's some pretty big houses here, especially these on the right, whilst on the left there's some small cul-de-sacs before the lane eventually comes to an end at these pretty houses. So far, so good. So now we've rounded the corner onto Church Lane and I've got the church spire in front of me here. To be fair, I've been able to see this pretty much all the way around the village because it's so tall. We're heading for that in a moment. But also worth a mention is this little cemetery here. There's some Commonwealth war graves in there. I can see one just on this right hand side here. It's like a I don't know whether it's a churchyard extension, but it would certainly make sense because it's nowhere near the actual churchyard, which is up there, of course. So we'll head for the church next, and then when we've been to the church, we'll hop across the road because there's something interesting on this side too. It's called the Oving Clinic. The most prominent building in the village is the Church of St Andrew, whose tall spire dominates the local landscape. St Andrew's dates mainly from the 13th century, having been built in 1220 in the early English style. From the outside at that time, it must have looked very much as it does now. The inside, though, is a different story. It's been greatly altered twice, the first in 1840 and the second in 1881. Outside in the churchyard, we've got a rough-hewn cross, which is the village's war memorial. A family that's heavily connected to the church would be the Woods. They were responsible for the restoration in 1840, and one of the stained glass windows here was given by Reverend H.G. Woods in memory of his uncle, who died in 1879. Here's a fun fact. In 1953, a television set was hired so that villagers could go into the church to watch the Queen's coronation. On the railings outside the church, there's a parish notice board, and you can all mark Ooving off your Chichester lists. Okay, so by the side of the road here, there's a little bit of parking for visitors to the church, but it's also for people who are visiting the clinic over the road. That is said clinic right there. Now, let's talk a bit about this, shall we? This is the Oving Clinic. It's not a normal surgery like the kind your regular run-of-the-mill GP would be available at. Instead, it's a specialist clinic for musculoskeletal medicine and sports injuries. The centre's team are led by specialist Dr. John Tanner, who has over 30 years' experience. Now, of course, the clinic hasn't always been a clinic. In fact, it used to be a school. Handily, it even tells you the dates that it was by its door. It was the school between 1839 and 1967. The clinic was founded in 1984, and Tanner and his wife Petra have been co-directors since 1991. Oving Clinic has been registered as a day case facility by the CQC since 1992. Moving on now, we've got Oving Manor on the right as we make for the High Street once again. It's just one of a few big buildings in this part of the village, which are only broken up by some barn conversions, like these for example. Beautiful village all in all, right? Okay, so we're into the final section now, which is generally speaking a housing estate, but there's also a few communal things here as well. I think there's a playground up here. There might even be a playing field. I know there's definitely a phone box because I can see it behind the camera. That will be the very last thing on this list to cover here in Ooving/Oving. Let's carry on. Highfield Lane is a more modern housing estate located at the village's southeastern corner. These were all built in the 1950s as new families moved into Ooving. Behind this street there's a playing field which contains the Ooving Community Garden. This wonderful little project began in response to a parish plan questionnaire which gave every resident an opportunity for their say on what was important to them. The playing field which accompanies this goes by the name of Diamond Jubilee Park. Originally an arable field, this was given to the village in 1977. In its early days, before any football could be played here, stones had to be collected from the pitch. Gashed knees were a common injury for players. Ooving's football club were very successful in the 1980s, and they were members of the Sussex County League in the 1997-98 season. We've arrived back at Highfield Lane and we're at the end of the walk. Here's the old red phone box and another parish notice board. Let's have a look inside the book exchange, shall we? We do this all over the country. This is something that's not new to me. You find these up and down the nation. Here we go. Plenty of books. An advert for the Walberton Short Map Bowls, which is apparently Wednesday and 7 until 9 PM. I've not got any plans to do Walberton at this present time, but of course I will be back to Chichester eventually and to West Sussex eventually, and of course I will cover that at some point. Right, let's head out of here. Okay, and we're back to where we began. This is where we started, right here. However, we are not quite done with the parish of Ooving yet, because there are lots of other things around the village that I still need to cover. One of them is a railway line, and it's got an interesting little feature which I don't think I've ever seen before anywhere else in the country. Let's go and find said railway line and show you what feature I'm talking about. Well, I couldn't have timed this better because the barriers on this level crossing have just come down. So there will be a train passing through. I always like to catch trains when I'm talking about railway lines. Let's see what this feature is that I'm talking about first. To the south of the village, there's a railway line. This is the West Coast Way line, upon which trains run into Chichester from Littlehampton and Worthing. Now, we're all familiar with speed cameras, but these things on either side of the line are not monitoring speed. I've never seen these before, but these cameras are here to capture vehicles which don't adhere to the level crossing signals. These cameras are a proven, cost-effective way to improve safety and encourage motorists not to take unnecessary risks when crossing the railway line. Just like a speed camera though, those that fail to comply face prosecution. As for the line itself, well, it's quite interesting. It was built in 1844 as the Brighton and South Coast Railway stretch between Chichester and Worthing. Oving had a station, although it was called Drayton. Its intention was to serve the local agricultural community and the Goodwood racecourse. Well, it's a bit different down south to how it is up north, I'm telling you. That train was literally seconds after the barriers came down. Normally up north, you're waiting for a good 2 or 3 minutes, aren't you? Or if you live in Doncaster at Arksey Level Crossing, you're waiting about half your lifetime. But here, that took seconds, and that was actually quite frightening, to be honest with you. So as a result, I missed the train, but never mind, never mind. You got the point, haven't you? It's a railway line, and it's got those interesting little cameras. It's funny, I've never seen them anywhere before in the country, and I've talked about no end of railway lines between the beginning and now. Just how it is. Now, there are other things as well to talk about around Oving/Ooving. Now, one thing this part of West Sussex is famous for would be soft fruit. Let's go and find one of the farms that produces such a commodity. So this is Colworth, once one of the prebendal manors of Oving. Colworth and its surroundings have long been an important agricultural area, with over 1,000 acres of farmland that stretches all the way up to Tangmere. For many years, and in the days before the Gribble Inn, Colworth had its own pub, built for the many farm workers around here. It was called the Nelson Arms, and it was situated on the site now occupied by a Mercedes-Benz garage on the A259. Agriculturally these days, soft fruit is grown on an industrial scale out here. This is Groves Farm, which is where the Summer Berry Company is located. They've been going since 1966, taking full advantage of West Sussex's temperate climate. They have both glasshouse and field production sites which churn out exceptional berries year after year to some of the UK's biggest names like Tesco, Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's. Strawberries, blackberries, raspberries and blueberries are all grown here. So yeah, Groves Farm is not the easiest thing to try and film for obvious reasons, because it's generally speaking private, but you get the idea. Summer fruit is a thing in West Sussex, and this is one of the places where it is grown, and it's a good place to come for a job as well. In the summer, I imagine labour is very much sought after down here, and as you can see, there's a sign here that says you can apply for a seasonal job. Come and join our team. I'm not sure whether I'd like to do it, but I'm sure some people out there would. Okay, we've got one more thing left to see here in the parish of Ooving, and it's actually another little village. It's called Merston. It's got a church, and it's also got something very interesting called the Chichester Flood Relief Channel. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Let's go and find both of those things to finish. To finish with, we're in Merston, which is the biggest of Oving's satellite settlements. This is the historic St Giles Church, located at the southernmost tip of the parish. The church dates mainly from the 13th century and consists of a chancel and a nave with no structural division between the two. It also has a north aisle which overlaps both the chancel and a south porch. It's built of rubble and is covered with modern rough cast. It has one bell, dated 1809. It was open too, so I went in for a little look around. Here's a memorial to James Pryor, a sexton of this church between 1897 and 1933. The churchyard here also has a curious little building next to it. This has been both a stable and a 19th century schoolhouse, and now describes itself as a studio which you can view by appointment. I know nothing more than that, I'm afraid, guys, but it's intriguing nonetheless. Fun fact, by the way, this churchyard is also semi-famous for woodpeckers, so I'm led to believe. Not far from the church is the Chichester Flood Relief Channel. In 1994, the city of Chichester and some surrounding villages were engulfed by a devastating flood from the River Levant. In 2003, a brand new scheme was set up to avoid a repeat. This flood channel, which cost £4 million, diverts water from the Levant at times when it threatens to break its banks, and then pumps it out to sea via Pagham Rife near Bognor Regis. Pagham's residents, though, were less than impressed with this idea. To finish, I opted for a drive through the rest of Merston. It's changed very little since how it appeared on a tithe map in 1838. However, many of its barns have now been converted into homes. And that's been Ooving. In places, this was a tough script to write and it made it a hard one to cover. Even so, it's now behind me and I can relax. I can't wait to return to Chichester for some more. That's it for now, but stay tuned folks, I will definitely be back. Bye for now. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.